Hello, welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Nancy Drew, Whispers in the Fog. Chapter 12, the list lengthens. Nancy looked closely at the photo. Did you say this woman bought this buckle recently? She asked the shopkeeper. That's right, a couple weeks ago, I believe. Was she just passing through the area, or does she live around here? Nancy asked as Bess and George wandered over. She could tell by George's gasp that she also noticed the photograph. She didn't say, the shopkeeper answered. Would you like to see the buckle? I'd be happy to open the case for you. No, thank you, Nancy said. Well, let me know if you change your mind, the shopkeeper said. She moved away to help Jenna with a sweater. Joan Kim, Bess said under her breath, wearing a buckle like the one Nancy found in the sea cave. George added. The buckle I found, Nancy said. There were only 3 made, and 2 of them are here in the store. So what's Joan Kim doing in a cave next to a whale holding pool? George asked. Especially when she hates whale watching, Bess pointed out, her eyes wide. Exactly, Nancy said, adding, I can't wait to get out here tomorrow morning. Ned joined them, and after they filled him in on the photograph, they all left for the drive back to the sea break. Back at the inn at last, Nancy, Ned, and Bess headed straight for their rooms and a welcome night's sleep. The next morning, Nancy couldn't wait to get started. She was still frustrated with her investigation for Katie as she felt she wronged against one dead end after another. She was eager to follow up on the discovery of the whale calf. What was it doing in the pool, and what did Joan Kim have to do with it, if anything? After breakfast at Katie's, Nancy decided to call Sheriff Harvey. When she went to Katie's office, Jenna was on the phone. I can't believe you made me wait this long, she heard Jenna say. I told you I was calling long distance. There was a pause while Jenna listened. Finally, she spoke again. Are you sure you didn't find my helmet? Well, call me at this number if it turns up. She put down the phone with a sigh and turned to Nancy. I guess I'm in the market for a new helmet, she said, leaving the room. Nancy called the sheriff. I was trying to reach Katie, Sheriff Harvey said, but her line was busy. I have Holt Scotto in my office now. I'm going to question him about a bicycle accident and the stalking you reported at Cypress Grove. Do you want to come down and make any further statements? We'll be right there, Nancy said, hanging up the phone and grabbing Ned. There was a little traffic on the coast road, so Nancy and Ned arrived at the sheriff's in record time. He gestured to them to take a long table. Holt Scotto sat on the other side of the table. Sheriff Harvey began by asking Holt Scotto his whereabouts on the night before last. Scotto hesitated while he seemed to think, and then he said he was out on his boat. The sheriff continued to question him, and then told him about being stalked in the Cypress Grove and about Bess's bicycle accident. I suppose they think I did it, Scotto said, flopping his long arms out to point at Ned and Nancy. Well, that's nuts, he said fiercely, and I never did any of those things. Did you pile the rocks outside the door of that abandoned lighthouse down on the coast? Nancy asked, and barricade my friend and me inside. Scotto looked at quickly, his eyes glaring at Nancy. He sputtered for a few minutes, and then declared, yes, and I'd do it again, just the same. He turned to the sheriff. I'd like to file a complaint, he said, against her. He pointed to Nancy. She was trespassing, entering private property and walking around and all that. Arrest her. Holt, what are you talking about? Sheriff Harvey said. You mean the lighthouse? Yes, I do, Scotto said. It's for sale, and I'm thinking about buying it. I was down there looking at fishing sites, and I thought the old lighthouse might be a real buy. Then she came butting in and tried to lock me in. That's what really happened. She tried to lock me in. Been following me all morning. That's exactly the opposite of what happened, Sheriff, Nancy said. As I told you before, he followed us down the coast road. I thought he was going to ram my car. As I recall, he didn't follow you the entire time, Sheriff Harvey stated. No, Nancy said. We just turned off in time and he drove on. That's when he came back to the lighthouse. His car was parked therein. So he was actually at the lighthouse first, the sheriff said. Well, I told you she was following me, Scotto said. Well, yes, he was, Nancy said, but Bess wanted to see the lighthouse, and Nancy could see this was getting her nowhere and changed her line of attack. Sheriff, if you recall, Mr. Scotto had already threatened me once at the end, so I was naturally on my guard. And if you had warned him to stay away from Nancy and the rest of us, Ned pointed out. Then, Nancy continued, we had become concerned when someone appeared to be following us down the coast. He has now admitted that he was the driver and he barricaded us in the lighthouse, which is further harassment. The night of the bicycle accident, his car was parked at the diner where we were there, but he wasn't inside. That would give him opportunity to tamper with the bike in the parking lot. And the bike was definitely tampered with, right, Sheriff? Ned said. The axle was sawn partly through. Sheriff Harvey nodded. I wasn't at the diner that night, Scotto said. I loaned my car to a friend because I was out on my boat. How come we're letting outsiders cause so much trouble, Bradley? He asked the sheriff. I told everybody that Katie Firestone was going to cause trouble with her boat. See, it's happening. You'll have that friend that borrowed your car come down and make a statement, won't you? Sheriff Harvey said, ignoring Scotto's last statement. I'd also like to talk to a few witnesses who can verify you were fishing that evening. They'll be in today, Scotto promised. Speaking of the diner, Mr. Scotto, Nancy said, I'm curious about something else. Yeah? Scotto muttered, staring at the table. Do you know Joan Kim, where she came from? Nancy asked. How'd she end up at Seabreak that night? Did you invite her to talk to the fishermen? Say, who's conducting this investigation anyway? Scotto asked, finally looking up. Just answer her question, Holt, Sheriff Harvey said. He sounded fed up. I never met her before that night. She lives up north nowhere. She just showed up in town saying she could help keep Seabreak free of whale watchers. His voice raised a pitch or two. Seemed like a good idea to me, he yelled. All right, that's enough, said the sheriff. Do you two have any more questions? He asked Nancy and Ned. Nancy shook her head. All right, Sheriff Harvey said. I'd like both you, Holt, and you, Miss Drew, to stay away from each other. You're on the opposite sides of the fence here. I want you to think that fence is a real thing that separates you two and keeps you away from each other. Do you understand? He stood up and motioned Holt to leave, adding, Holt, I want you to stay away from Katie, too, and all her friends, and anyone else she brings to town. It's none of your business. Scotto left the building, and the sheriff turned back to Nancy and Ned, his cheeks flushed with irritation. Nancy nodded to him. I know what you're going to say, she admitted. You have no proof that Holt Scotto was the one causing all the trouble. That's right, Miss Drew. I'll check out his alibi the night before last, but it'll probably be verified by his friends, Ned said. Nancy knew that Ned was disgusted and still suspected Scotto. That's right, the sheriff affirmed. I need some kind of proof, even good circumstantial evidence. We've got next to nothing. Sheriff, while we're here, Nancy said, I've got a couple of questions for you. What do you know about Andy Jason? The whale-watching guy? The sheriff answered. I haven't heard anything negative. Why? Nancy told him about Jason's offers to Katie and how he seemed to be hanging around a lot lately. If Scotto does prove to be innocent, Jason's my second choice as suspect. Well, Jason's a real fireball of a businessman, I understand, Sheriff Harvey said. But I haven't heard anything shady. I'll ask around. Good, Nancy said. The second question is about a whale calf. Nancy and Ned told him about the previous day's adventure here in the sea cave and about finding the holding pool. I can hardly believe it, Sheriff Harvey said. Sounds strange to me. You might want to contact the Coast Guard. Marine problems are really their jurisdiction. I know what land you're talking about. It used to belong to the Purdy family, but I heard it was sold several months ago. Check with the county assessor's office next door. They might have some information for you. He walked them to the door. Now stay away from Holt Scotto, Miss Drew. He's definitely a hothead, but we got no proof he's broken the law. Nancy and Ned thanked the sheriff and checked with the county assessor's office. The records show that the property had been deeded to a corporation with the name of Shore Imports, Inc. On the ride home, Nancy's thoughts were racing. What if it's Joan Kim, Ned? She asked. You mean causing all the problems, Ned asked. Do you think Joan Kim is the one trying to put Katie out of business? She was at the diner to talk about ways to intimidate people who wanted to conduct whale-watching excursions. Nancy said she was excited by the possibility of solving the case. Her words tumbled up. No one invited her. She just showed up, Scotto said. If you can believe him, Ned grumbled. Look, every time we tried to pin the thing on Scotto, we wind up on a blind alley. I'm not going to give him up entirely as a suspect, but I'm adding Joan Kim to our list. As far as I'm concerned, at this point, she and Sneaky always seems to be turning up Andy Jason are right up there with Holt Scotto. When they arrived at Katie's, everyone was waiting to hear what happened. Over lunch, Nancy and Ned filled them in quickly, winding up with Nancy's conclusions. When they finished eating, Katie, George, and Jenna began gathering up their kayaking gear, and Ned helped them haul down the boat. Nancy told them that she and Bess would be out in a minute. Then she went to the office to call the Coast Guard and suggested Nancy check out Shore Imports Inc. on the internet. The phone rang before either of them could get started. It was Sheriff Harvey who reported that Holt Scotto's night for the alibi before last had been confirmed by nearly a dozen people. Nancy called the Coast Guard and left a message about the whale calf. Then Bess booted up the computer for Shore Imports Inc. It didn't take her long. The information was brief, only the address and contact information. Nancy, look, Bess exclaimed. As Nancy ran on the screen, her eyes opened wide at the name of the contact. Joan Kim, President. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.